Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. First graphic we've got is some flooding that's going on up in the interior Tanana Valley vicinity. This specifically, Rosie Creek flooding. You can see fairly significant there, as it's just about covered the top of that vehicle. And here, the next frame also here, again, more than just water pooling in low-lying grassy areas. This, in some areas, pretty significant flooding that's been going on. And from there, looking at the fire danger map, we've got an area where it kind of has grown or became extreme. Noatak Valley area there in the northwest, and also kind of a pretty good increase over the danger of yesterday on the Seward Peninsula, back to the high, very high, and extreme fire danger in that location. Otherwise, a little bit of a pickup there in the upper Tanana Valley, or the upper Yukon Valley flats, but really not that significant, and pretty low actually for what otherwise could be, what it could be in the month of June. And moving on to the hazardous weather graphic, the flood watches have been canceled now in the shaded areas there, the non-red shaded area. And so those have ended, but flood warnings continue for tonight into through tomorrow night for the Good Pasture River. Still looking, flooding still imminent on that river. And upper Chena and Salsa rivers still under the influence of a flood warning again through Saturday night, as well as two rivers. So those areas still under flood warnings, but the watches have been canceled. And from there, satellite imagery showing band of clouds there and kind of a spiral, pretty good low center coming into the Russian Far East, with the front pushing wind and rain across St. Lawrence Island into the Bering Strait and into the Alaska Peninsula. Kind of a narrow band, but clouds of moisture extending southward there to just along or off the coast of the Yukon Delta, just north of Nunivak Island, and then extends off to the west, well to the north of the Pribilofs. And farther to the south, a southern storm there that's south of Adak, and the associated front and cloud shield pushing at least clouds, possibly some rain, and a little bit of an increase in the winds into Adak and Atka. But Shimia, western Aleutians dry, and across southern Bering Sea, light winds again with low clouds, areas of fog. And the eastern Aleutians, not a bad day there, dry conditions, light winds, as well as the Alaska Peninsula. And then interior areas, you can see mostly cloudy, some sun though breaking out, especially over the upper Yukon Valley, which elevated the fire danger a little higher than it was from yesterday. And then also down the lower Yukon River Valley, you can see some breaks there. A few breaks in the Copper River Basin, but basically not a lot of clearing today. Started out with some sun in the central Tanana Valley Fairbanks, but some afternoon buildups kind of clouding the sky up there. And rain and showers continued over the southeast coast there with that leftover moisture. Actually, a system shifting eastward, a weak one, still off the coast, but it'll be moving in and this evening and dissipating. And then a trough there over the eastern Eagle area, just north of Northway. That's got some shower activity with it and scattered thunderstorms. And that's going to be dropping southeastward. On the chart, weak low there, 1,005 millibar low east of Eagle, or in the Dawson area. Trough extending from that. We've got clouds, showers, south central Alaska. Isolated thunderstorms developing central Alaska range, and back to the northwest there to the southern slopes of the central eastern Brooks Range, but nothing really widespread. And then a break, a narrow break, resulting in some sunshine there over the western north slope on down into eastern Norton Sound, but rain with the front and gusty winds pushing into the Bering Strait with gusts 40 miles an hour, and rain and fog and drizzle spreading slowly eastward in toward Nome and covering the western Seward Peninsula. And there was some moisture had made landfall along the Yukon Delta, kind of linking up to some leftover moisture there coming caught up in the southwest wind flow across the southern Bering Sea from the Pribilofs. So kind of a cloudy, damp day there for the southwest coast, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. And then the showery conditions over northeast Bristol Bay. You can see higher pressure beginning to ridge and develop And so it was a dry day, but cloudy with light winds for the Alaska Peninsula. Fair for Kodiak Island with no precipitation today. And then the rain edging northward there on the north side of that frontal boundary that's farther to the south. Weak low, as I mentioned, off the southeast coast, kept it unsettled wet there today. Now continuing this evening as that continues to slide eastward and weaken, and should be a little bit drier toward midnight and definitely after, with showers ending over the northern southeast coast. Should showers also end whatever's left along the North Gulf Coast with possible clearing. And then that trough keeps showers lingering there over the Copper River Basin, especially central eastern Copper River Basin, Wrangell Mountains northward across the eastern Alaska Range, so Nebezna, Tok, Northway, even Chicken, chance of showers through the night tonight, and then should end there for Eagle. Interior not looking bad. Got high pressure ridging into the central interior, actually strengthening a little bit as it shifts eastward. So look for dry conditions. Whatever shower activity is going on will end, and should see a general decrease in the cloudiness. Low clouds and fog in the Arctic coast. Wind and rain shifts northeastward with that slow moving front, with low center still back over the Russian Far East. And rain may advance as far northeast as Point Lay on the western Arctic coast, and should begin to taper off along the Yukon Delta coast, but southwest flow keep a chance of showers in Kuskokwim Bay and Nunavut Island. And windy, rainy conditions for the Aleutians as that front swings northward, gets closer, and that'll spread into the Alaska Peninsula throughout the night, edging eastward at least to Sand Point by morning. And with high pressure ridge just to the west of Kodiak, northwest winds will clear the skies out there. And the Panhandle, again, decreasing showers. And then the forecast for Saturday, first day of the weekend, still some lingering showers through that trough, moving pretty quickly. The ones over the eastern interior tonight drop southward, weakens, but that's what's holding the shower threat in over the southern southeast coast through the afternoon, with dry conditions to the north, maybe some sun breaks, and isolated thunderstorms after morning sun, mostly sunny conditions over the eastern interior, especially along the Alaska Range, possibly up into the White Mountains, but again, nothing too widespread. And then weak high pressure will result in partly mostly sunny skies there along the Yukon River down in the Kuskokwim Valley. Even Susitna Valley should see some sun, as well as Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula, with the high ridge axis moving through. And then the front spreads rain to Kodiak Island, especially in the afternoon. And light rain, fog, drizzle continue over the southwest interior Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Delta. And that slow-moving front beginning to weaken. Winds definitely not what they were with it. Still a little breezy and definitely damp, with low clouds, fog, IFR conditions associated with it that'll extend back down to St. Lawrence Island. And from there, looking at the outlook for Sunday, that low drifts eastward, but really not moving much, but weakens, and the front dissipated and gone, but enough moisture in the westerly flow from the Bering Sea, good westerly flow, and a couple of troughs will spread a widespread area of rain from Kodiak Island up across Bristol Bay that'll extend right up the Seward Peninsula and actually possibly up the northwest coast to Point Lay, but from there eastward, fair conditions, a little breezy, gusty east winds on the eastern Arctic coast. Isolated to maybe widely scattered thunderstorms could break out over the Wrangell Mountains and Tanana Valley area, but doesn't look really conducive as far as any widespread thunderstorm outbreak. And nice day, remnants of that ridge that shifts over to the Panhandle, result in partly to mostly sunny skies. And lows tonight, 40s to maybe lower 50s, warmest in the upper Yukon Valley, and even the entire Arctic coast now above freezing, lower 40s North Slope, 40s to lower 50s, southern Alaska and the Panhandle, mostly in the 40s out over the Aleutians and Bering Sea. Highs tomorrow, much like we've seen for the last several days, 60s, some areas popping lower 70s if you get the sunshine, and maybe a little bit of a recovery, not much though. South central Alaska, 65 to 70, call it, and the Panhandle, mostly in the 60s, some 50s, and 40s and 50s everywhere else. Lows Sunday morning, right around 50 there for the central interior, on up the Yukon River to the flats area, and lows in the mid-40s on the North Slope, lower 40s on the Arctic coast, exception being 35 at Kaktovik and Barter Island, mid-upper 40s Bristol Bay, 45 to 50 south central Alaska, 40s to lower 50s for the Panhandle out in the Bering Sea, looking at lows about the same, not much change, mid-40s Pribilofs Aleutians, upper 40s eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, near 40, St. Lawrence Island. And a little bit of a recovery, maybe a couple of degrees warmer possible there for the eastern interior with highs in the lower 70s. Otherwise, not much change, still 50s and 60s most everywhere else.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, looks like some marginal VFR with maybe IFR just off the central Arctic coast there. Otherwise, not bad VFR for the North Slope and just about all the interior, with the exception of the west coast there and into the Noatak Valley. We've got marginal VFR. That location across the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta to Togiak Bay. IFR along the Yukon Delta coast, including Nunivak Island. Marginal for the Pribilofs and the Aleutians. Mostly IFR. Kodiak Island, VFR, and the southeast coast, IFR with some marginal VFR that extends on up to Yakutat. For the afternoon Saturday, not much change. Better, though, for the Panhandle. Marginal VFR with VFR Lynn Canal Glacier Bay. And we've got VFR in the forecast, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, northward, right to the Arctic coast. And marginal VFR extending eastward into the Kobuk Valley and south and southwest to the southwest coast. Kuskokwim Valley and about the same there. Pushing in over the southwest mountains, Auckland, and Togiak Bay, but staying out of Kuskokwim Valley. And then out west in the Bering Sea and Aleutians, mostly IFR there, and then mostly marginal VFR for the eastern Bering to St. Lawrence Island. And for Sunday morning, VFR, Arctic coast, maybe a little marginal there on the central coast. Otherwise, really a pretty good start to the day Sunday with VFR for sure for the North Slope down into the interior. And that extends into the Susitna Valley and most of Cook Inlet. Marginal VFR, Eastern Kenai Peninsula, Western Prince William Sound, on up into the coast range there, possibly Valdez, and then VFR for the eastern North Gulf Coast, and possibly a little marginal VFR along the central and south coast of the Panhandle, and about the same type of weather out in the Bering Sea. Widespread IFR, including most of the Aleutians, but better conditions as you head up toward the Bering Strait. And for the afternoon Sunday, VFR North Slope down into the interior, Upper Tanana Valley, and mid Yukon River Valley into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, but pretty good marginal VFR over the west and southwest interior, covering all of Bristol Bay and jumping the Alaska Range into possibly western Cook Inlet, northern Susitna Valley up toward Windy Pass, marginal possibly. Copper River Basin looking pretty good. Central areas in the north, but down toward the Coast Range, Wrangell Mountains, pretty marginal. IFR, Western Prince William Sound, and VFR for the Panhandle for passes tomorrow. VFR, both Anatuvik and Adigan will be VFR tomorrow, either approach, and Lake Clark and Merrill VFR. Rainy VFR, windy VFR. Isabel, VFR, risk of a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Same forecast from Antasta, risk of a thunderstorm mostly on the north entrance, and otherwise VFR. And for Tanita, VFR, could be a few clouds around, but the VFR variety. And for Portage, VFR. Chilcoot and White, starting out marginal, becoming VFR by, say, midday. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet there, over the Russian Far East, extending into the Bering Strait with that cold upper low, and then quite a gradient south of that, south up front, away from the circulation center there at 8,000 feet over the central Bering, then another cold pool over the central Aleutians at 4,000 feet, basically 6,000 feet, give or take a little there for the Panhandle and all interior Alaska. And for icing, an area of rime with that system there, I just spoke of in the Russian Far East, frontal boundary could be a zone of considerable moderate rime icing from St. Lawrence Island across western Seward Peninsula, right on up to possibly Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, and then cuts off right around Point Lay. Otherwise, to the south, along the southwest coast, that's just areas of possibly isolated moderate mixed icing. Same thing for Kodiak Island, Aleutian Range, and also for the Fox Islands, exiting Atka Island, and then some leftover diminishing icing threats there for the southern southeast coast. Jet stream, weak ridging tomorrow coming across the state as upper lows set up there over the Mackenzie River Delta, and then the slower moving one over the Russian Far East. Pacific jet 100 knots cutting up across the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and diving south eastward off the southeast coast. 9,000-foot winds, 45 to 55 knot winds at this level there from St. Lawrence Island to the northwest coast. 35 to 40 knots at 3,000 feet. And with that goes considerable moderate chop from Cape Lisburne all the way down to Savunga and Gamble.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider, and joining me again is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. Thanks again for joining us, Cindy.
Thanks for having me back, Dave.
Sure thing. And I love saying Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska's National Weather Service because that's not weather. Why is the Tsunami Program part of the National Weather Service?
Well, it's because the Weather Service absolutely rocks at warning people for every kind of, devastating natural hazard.
The mission of the Weather Service is to protect life and property. And so how does the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska, which is a very unique office, again, within the Weather Service, it's not weather, how do those folks help us protect life and property?
The National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer is a national warning center, and we analyze seismic traces 24/7 all around the world. So when there's an earthquake anywhere on the planet, we see it and analyze it within minutes.
Within minutes, and
Within
there's
minutes.
actually a goal to have it under, was it 5 minutes?
If there is a tsunami warning to be issued for continental America, we must get that out, or shoot to get that out in 5 minutes.
Okay. Now that's not something I have ever learned to do, so I know it would be a struggle for me to do that under probably hours, but it is fascinating to watch, and the office is open on a regular basis for tours, right?
Absolutely, come by Friday.
Okay.
Yep, every Friday at 1, 2, and 3 p.m. and they're open public free tours. And it's the most interesting place on the planet. You really should check it out.
Okay, and the office team is made up of people that are earth scientists, not meteorologists or atmospheric scientists. Talk about some of the types of people that work there.
Right, we are out of place in our National Weather Service, but we are geologists, geophysicists, oceanographers. We even have an astrophysicist on board, computer software architects, electronic technicians that are brilliant and innovative. Our software is all written in-house. Our instrumentation is designed in-house. So it's a really, really unique place, and it's just a couple handfuls of people that work there. So
sure.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ways to get a tsunami alert message is on Twitter.
Right.
And I can follow the Twitter address, and we'll put that up on the screen for you there. But it's usually a very quick message that tells you initially what the magnitude of an earthquake could be and about where its epicenter was. What are some of the other ways that you can get that alert message?
Well, Twitter's my favorite too.
Yeah.
And you don't even need a Twitter account to receive it. So
That's
it just comes in like an SMS message. But you can also receive it via email, weather radio, of course, the crawler on your television screen, on the internet, Google Alerts.
Right.
Marine radio if you're out in harbors and boats. Actually, marine radio is probably,
yeah, it is a good one.
That's our partnership with the Coast Guard. We're really grateful for that, absolutely. But there's a variety of ways in dissemination.
Okay.
And locally, excuse me, I'm sorry, but locally in the communities, the sirens will go off as well.
Right. So lots of different ways to get that very important message very quickly when that matters to you. One of the ways that the Warning Center practices with communities is a test on a yearly basis, right?
Right.
How does that work?
Thanks for bringing that up. It's a controversial issue, but it's super important to help us warn better and really serve Alaskans. So the week of March 27th, the commemoration of the 1964 event, for that week we have a Tsunami Preparedness Week every year. We like communities to get out and do drills and practice and do everything we can to raise awareness. And part of that is a live code test where we actually issue the warning message live and we activate the emergency alert system, which means sirens go off, the TV crawler happens, and it's a test.
We're doing everything that would normally happen without the real threat of the tsunami, just to practice as much as possible.
Right, and this is a major partnership with the State of Alaska, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, the Emergency Operations Center, and the Alaska Broadcasters Association. Without the media, we wouldn't be able to do this. So the three groups really work tightly together to to do our best to warn, educate the public that this is happening, so they don't wonder and get scared about it. It has been remarkable what we've learned. I mean, it pretty much breaks somewhere every time, but then we fix it, and it gets better. So a quick example is just a few years ago, we used to, when we issued a message, it would activate the entire state. Right? I mean, Kotzebue, Nome, Bethel, everybody would be in tsunami warning. And so now we can regionalize it to where the actual event is taking place. That's pretty huge.
Right. So identifying points of failure and also points of success, and making sure we continue down that successful path so that folks are warned as quickly and accurately as possible.
Absolutely. And, you know, to get our communities involved to prep themselves, prep their businesses, prep their tourism, prep their schools, you know, just make this an annual thing they need to be doing.
Right. So as citizens wanting to be prepared, we should be prepared to learn more about that test that's happening usually toward the end of March every year.
Right, and you should be happy that it's happening.
Right.
Instead of upset. Definitely be happy that it's happening.
Right. Just as we test tornado sirens in tornado country, we also have to test the tsunami program as well.
Right, because there isn't enough time. You know, for a local tsunami, the wave will arrive in less than 2 minutes. So it's super important that people know what to do.
Very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for helping us know more about the Tsunami Ready program and the test. And the Tsunami Warning Center is a very unique and very important job in the National Weather Service that is just fascinating to me every time I visit the office. So,
it's the only one for the continent. You really should come check it out.
It's an international effort.
Yes.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
And thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the the coastal water forecast there. Southern southeast coast small craft advisories. Northwest winds that ridging off the coast, resulting in northwest winds at 25 miles per hour with 8 to 9 foot seas. And then west-northwest 15 to 20 on the north coast. Inside waters, pretty light, south 10 at for Lynn Canal. Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, as well as other areas northwest at 10 with 2 foot seas. Outlook for Sunday. Small craft advisories now for Lynn Canal for southerly winds, especially in the afternoon. 25 knots, seas at 5 feet. 15 knot south winds for Stevens Passage, and west at 10 for Clarence Strait. And for the coastal waters there along Prince of Wales Island, northwest at 20. And from Port Alexander on up to, say, roughly Elfin Cove, southwest, 15 to 20 knots, and then on up toward Yakutat, southerlies at 15 knots. Prince William Sound, light westerly breeze tomorrow at 10 knots with seas no more than 2 feet. For the eastern North Gulf Coast, west winds 15 knots, 6 foot seas. Cook Inlet, south to southwest, 15 knots, 3 to 4 foot seas. And west winds at 20 knots for the Barren Islands, west 20 knots for the western North Gulf Coast with 6 to 7 foot seas. And for Kamishak Bay, southeast winds 20 knots. Those will pick up to 25 knots for small craft advisories for Kamishak Bay on Sunday. And southern Cook Inlet, southeast, a little breezier, 20 knots, but seas staying around 3 feet. North of the Forelands, winds will be mostly northeast at 15 with 3 foot seas. Barren Islands, south 20 knots. And western North Gulf Coast, southeast at 20. The small craft advisories, both for the eastern North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound for 25 knot winds. In the case of Prince William Sound, they'll be out in the east, and in the case of around Middleton Island, they'll be from the southeast. Kodiak Island, east side, south 20 knots tomorrow. Shelikof Strait, southwest 15. And Bristol Bay, southeast 20. North side of the Alaska Peninsula, winds will be east at 20 knots, and then from Cape Sarachev all the way up to Sitkinak, southeast winds 25 knots, 7 to 8 foot seas. And for Bristol Bay on Sunday, Alaska Peninsula, small craft advisories, west-southwesterlies 25 knots, and west 25 knots right on up to Sitkinak, up the east side of Kodiak Island, 20 knots for Shelikof Strait, and Bristol Bay southwest at 20. Western Aleutians, 20 knot winds there west of Adak and just about all the areas there, but small craft advisories for Adak and Atka, north 25 to 30 knots. Small craft advisories also for the Fox Islands for east-northeast winds at 25 knots. And for Sunday, small craft advisories continue for the Fox Islands, west-southwest 25 for Unalaska Island, Unmac Island, southwest 25, Adak and Atka. Southwest 20 to 25 knots, seas maybe up to 8 feet. And then small craft advisories from Chitka to Shimia. Southwest winds on Sunday there, 25 knots with 6 to 7 foot seas. And for the Pribilofs, light winds tomorrow from the northwest at 10 knots, but small craft advisories there for the Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, and Norton Sound, all looking at sustained winds at 30 knots with 9-foot seas there from Nunivak Island on up to St. Lawrence Island, southwest 25 knots for St. Matthew Island. And for Sunday, southwest 20 there for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline, lighter winds for the Yukon Delta coast down to 15 from the west, also lighter St. Lawrence Island, west at 20. And Pribilof, southwest winds 20 knots, 7-foot seas, St. Matthew Island, west at 20. And for the Arctic coast, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, light variable winds tomorrow, 5 to 10 knots. Seas in open water areas maybe up to 2 feet. And then gets a little more organized and more of a breeze there on the central coast for east winds of 15 knots. West side, especially from Point Ley on down toward Cape Beaufort, southeast 20. And small craft advisories, Wales to Cape Thompson for 25 knot winds right out of the south. Those small craft advisories continue into Sunday, but the direction will become southeast. Then we've got easterly winds at 20 knots for the entire stretch of the Beaufort Sea coast, with, again, seas in open water areas running 2 to as high as 4 feet. For tonight, rain and wind there spread eastward along the Seward Peninsula. Start to taper off at St. Lawrence Island, but pushes northeastward across Noatak Valley to the extreme western Arctic coast. Another front brings wind and breezy conditions into the central Aleutians, expanding eastward to the Alaska Peninsula, and showers will be slowly decreasing over the southeast coast, and a trough will have lingering showers linger over the southeast interior and eastern Copper River Basin, but that thing kicks off to the southeast. We'll keep a threat of showers in over the Panhandle tomorrow and Sunday. More rain in the west.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.